No thinking person thinks that Kamala Harris was in charge of the administration for the past 3 or 4 years. That's pure fantasy. If you read any of the reports of the insiders of who's operating things behind the scenes, or whether Joe Biden was in charge the first few years, no one is saying that Kamala Harris is running the show.
If I may, real quick, just to respond to that point, real quick.
Gibbs, do you care if they take from you? You were next. It was your back.
I mean, Rob, if it's quick, I want to get in here, Rob. But
Harris herself has said of many of these issues, she was the last person in the room. And my statement is, Harris.
What do you want?
Hey, you talk to your best friend like that. It's rude. Okay, quick question for you.
Yeah.
On, I'm like 30 minutes behind or 20 minutes behind you covering this segment. Rob went on a tirade about, and I think you were dealing with this in a Twitter space, is something like, well, she's the vice president now, so why should we trust any promise that she makes? Because she's in office now, she could do it now. I'm curious what you make of how effective you think this would be, just flipping that around on them. You know, she's the vice president. She doesn't have any like real power. Donald Trump was president. Why didn't he do all his
I ask that all the time. Yeah, we already had Donald Trump for 4 years. That's why I thought it was so funny that he still ran on Make America Great or Make America Great Again. Like, you were just president, bro. What do you mean Make America Great Again? You didn't get anything done in your 4 years. But they already have a cope. They have like a prepackaged cope. Remember, there's a prepackaged cope for everything. But their prepackaged answer was, well, when Trump was president the first time, he didn't know how bad the deep state was, and everybody was against him. That's why he didn't get anything done. But this time around, he'll be able to get things done because he knows that he's working against the deep state. Yeah, gotcha. That's usually there. Yeah.
Oh, I thought they had something more creative than that, because to me, like I watched this Dylan Burns panel yesterday, and the chain smoker guy, that dude is unhinged.
The
like,
top left dude.
Yeah,
he shouldn't really be at any debate. It's kind of a waste of time, but yeah.
Yeah, he's just an absolute dick. But I've been hearing this thought terminating sentence all the time. Well, she's the vice president right now. If she's in power, she can make all this happen. She can reduce healthcare costs. She can reduce childcare costs. She can do all of it. And it's just like, well, let's just grant the premise that she has the power to do it now, but we could just easily, effortlessly flip that around on you. Donald Trump wasn't anybody's vice president. He was the president. He actually had full control of not just Congress for 2 years, but also a sympathetic Supreme Court. So you could easily make the case that Trump at his peak during his presidency had more of government, at least under his nominal control, than President Biden ever did. And yet he failed to repeal and replace Obamacare. He failed to build a wall. He failed to cap insulin at $35. He failed
to do infrastructure.
Right. Fail. So I just didn't know if you think that there was any utility in just like parking there and saying, okay, if that's the standard, then I need you to explain to me persuasively why your cult leader failed so spectacularly. Like, even if you want to shit all over Kamala, by definition, objectively, your guy is still worse and less competent. Or they just hit you with the that cope you just said.
Yeah, it's. I mean, truly, you're just kind of looking for like the checkmate, whatever moves, because like none of this is done in good faith, right? Like no part of any of these arguments for Trump is done in good faith.
So
like how many times have you heard like the no wars talking point? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, no, I mean,
like
we're
Syria.
actually
I thought, like, remember, there were no wars under Trump, but he also eliminated ISIS. Like, what? There were no wars under Trump, but he bombed Syria's airport. There were no wars under Trump, but he still did all the drone strikes in Yemen. There were no what is it? Like, none of.
Well, I'm curious. So you're more of a foreign policy wonk than I am, but was the Afghanistan the only declared war that we were in? Like, what other declared wars are we in?
The thing is, I don't even know what it means for like a question. Did we even formally declare war on Afghanistan, or was that just did we do that under the authorization for use of military force that we still had left over from Iraq?
You know what? You're right.
I don't even know if there was like a formal war on Afghanistan declared. I don't know when was the last time.
No, you're right, because Congress would have to do it, and I don't remember a formal declaration.
Yeah, I don't think I could be wrong, but I think the authorization for using military force, didn't that come from the Gulf War in '91?
Yeah, I think that was the
so
genesis.
We didn't even really have a declared war under Bush, right?
Well, yeah.
So it's like,
right.
Yeah,
because it was the war on terror. You don't declare war on terror.
Yeah.
What was
And we just don't declare war anymore. That's not really how things go, especially because we're dealing with so many non-state actors now, right? The Taliban kind of is a non-state actor. You know, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. These are all non-state actors. And the biggest like military conflict probably in the past 20 years, excluding Ukraine and Russia, was probably the Syrian civil war. And there were no like formal wars declared there. So
So quick Google Food tells me that the last formal declaration of war was World War II. So yeah. All right. So okay.
Maybe, yeah,
well then,
sure.
no, I mean that's what Senate.gov is saying according to my Google Food. But okay. Well then, take formal wars out of the equation.
Let's take formal wars out and let's look at big military strikes.
Right.
And I might be brain farting here, but have there been any under Biden? Because I know under Trump you had.
Would you count the Houthi thing? Would you count that as a?
You maybe could count the Houthi
ships?
thing. Was that just
Yeah.
the U.S. or was that done with like UN approval?
I don't know if it's done with UN approval.
I don't remember if that was like NATO, UN, or just the U.S. That might have just been the U.S. I know that the English, I think, had like a carrier or some boat there.
Yeah.
But okay, so you've got the Yemen strike. Okay, under Trump, you had the Syrian airport was bombed. That was a big
Right.
strike.
He vaporized Soleimani.
Yes, yes, that's true. He did an assassination of Soleimani. By the way, I don't even disagree with either of those actions. But
Not necessarily. That there's some sound. I mean,
But I
you
don't
could make
think. But
the
it's just.
argument
But if that's what we're gonna say, right? Like the idea that like Trump was involved in less war. Like what the fuck does that even mean? Yeah.
Right. The reason I'm asking is, okay, since we know now that Afghanistan was not a formal war, but that's one less major conflict that the United States is directly involved with under Biden, right? I mean, like she said something the other day, and it was apparently fact checked. Like the vice president said something like, "We have no troops deployed in active combat zones," or something to that effect. And apparently, it's like, yeah, but no. Like apparently, we have U.S. troops
In Syria, don't
that
we?
are. Yeah, that are in places where active combat may occur, but it's not been designated by the Department of Defense as like an active combat zone or an active war. So I think they're kind of like, playing fast and loose with the definitions there. But
All of
would
it
be
is like
fair-
fast and loose and like dumb and retarded and like because I mean there were three soldiers that died. I don't know if they were in southern Syria or if they were in northern Jordan, but remember there was the drone
Yeah.
strike that killed a couple military people. So yeah, it's all of these. The problem is like all of these terms are so amorphous and like political that it doesn't really mean anything. Like I didn't know if Trump was going to fight on this. Like no, I don't even know. Harris might know. I'm not sure. I know Hillary was very smart. I know Trump is I really don't know how intelligent Harris is. But it was funny to me that Harris tried to take credit for Biden exiting Afghanistan. Technically,
should.
though, what? She should?
I think she should.
Oh, she could. She
think,
could.
yeah.
But that was on Trump's timetable that he negotiated.
Right.
But I don't think Trump wants to take credit for it because it'll sound like it was his fault that the 13 people died. But I don't think that Trump knows. I wish Harris would have asked him this. I feel very. I wish Harris campaign needs to reach out to me, and I'll give you like one or two killer questions, okay? And I'll pay your campaign all my money if I'm wrong, okay? I think there are some key questions you could ask Trump that he doesn't know. I think Donald Trump thinks that the Taliban killed those 13 American soldiers.
Yeah, instead of ISIS-K.
Yeah, and that's why he makes it such a huge deal. I think he knows that. I'm sorry, I think he doesn't know that. And it would be very funny to hear him that up on stage. But yeah, it's the whole like thing of like, what are we involved in wars or whatever the fuck is like retarded. I think is stupid.
But based on what you know, because again, you track both the Russia-Ukraine situation and the Gaza situation. As far as I know, like we don't have boots on the ground there, right? Like there's
where?
no
In
Ukraine or Gaza, right?
So
like, we're not.
Even this is a question that requires some amount of good faith. Who was I talking to recently about this? When somebody says boots on the ground, the good faith, obvious interpretation of that is like a fighting force of soldiers.
Right.
Now, in Ukraine and maybe in Israel, we might have like special ops there that help with training missions or training local police or something like that. We might have those people there. And there will be people. I think the one Russian paid Jackson Hinkle, he, I think, tried to use that in an argument against me, and maybe even Fuentes did, where they're like, oh, no, we actually do have troops in Ukraine. It's like, not really. Not how you would mean troops or boots on the ground. That's not true. But so I think we do have soldiers there, but they're not like active fighting forces. They're there for like training and stuff. Yeah.
Right. So it's fair to say that we are not involved in the hot war against Russia or Hamas.
No,
Like,
not only that, we're involved. My guess would be, and somebody with more broad foreign policy experience can check me here, we're probably involved in less military conflict today directly. I would think a lot less than we were.
Yeah, that was my question because to me, when I hear them say that, there were no wars under Trump or we were less involved with war under Trump, I'm like, but are we though? Because the only de facto war that we were really involved with was, my understanding, was Afghanistan. And that actually, we ended that on Biden's watch, not Trump.
A few. So I think Biden, was the one that officially pulled us out of and pulled the plug on the Saudi coalition in Yemen. I believe Biden ended that involvement completely. Like, somebody can look this up, or please check if somebody. I don't think we were involved in drone strikes or anything in Yemen anymore. I believe that's the case. Number one. And then number two, we completely exited Afghanistan. And number three, I don't think we're involved in any more combat operations at all, active combat operations in Syria, which we were under Trump. I don't know if those were still happening at the end of Trump's admin or not, though. But yeah.
Well, yeah. So then it sounds like it's a full-on lie.
It is, because people just look at the big hot wars right now, all of which Trump contributed to, which is also very frustrating, again, because people are very one-dimensional. So, for instance, one of the big inciting moments for the Great March of Return, the border riots, was the fact that the U.S. The U.S. Agreed to acknowledge the embassy moving to Jerusalem. That was like one of
Tel Aviv.
Yeah, that was a big inciting. From Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, yeah. That was a big inciting moment for the Palestinians. And then the Abraham Accords also stoked those flames a lot too, because the Palestinians continued to feel like, oh, we're getting left behind and ignored, like we got to do some shit. These are things that were happening under Kushner, under the Trump administration, that pushed towards October 7th, but he'll never get credit for that because it's not, the linkage is too complicated. And there's I always want to say cigar report. It's the something. It's not an officer.
Special Inspector General about
Yes.
You're talking about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
We've talked
pullout
about that
deal
one,
was insane. I don't think I read that report fully. I think I skimmed it. I hope I skimmed it. Otherwise, Piso's going to be in here screaming 2 months later saying I lied about skimming it. But I'm pretty sure that report lays the blame for how catastrophic that withdrawal it was. I think almost completely at the foot of the Trump administration.
Well,
and I think part of the reason why was because I bring this up a lot, that the Afghanistan government wasn't involved in those negotiations. My understanding is that when the pullout started to happen, as the Taliban were starting to make their way through Afghanistan-controlled territory, they were literally showing up and saying like, oh, you guys shouldn't even be fighting here because this area has already been promised to us. That there were some Afghanistan soldiers that were like, we had no idea this is, and then the will to fight and everything just evaporated instantaneously. And Trump had already drawn down troops to historically low levels when the Biden admin came in. I don't know if it was you or somebody else that brought this up. Remember also, Trump wanted to pull everybody out of Afghanistan, even more than he already did before he left, and they said no to that. So yeah, like Biden was in a pretty position at that point, and the Afghanistan government was also in a position at that point. So all of these things, it sucks because this is the strategy, and it worked really well for Trump. He played it well to kick the can down the road, just like he did with some of his expiring tax cuts. And I hope it doesn't set the pace for, I'm never going to do anything permanent. I'm just going to do something, and I'm going to make it expire on the next term. And if I'm still president, I'll extend it so I get credit for it again. But if I'm not president, and it lapses under my the next person's administration, they can get blamed for something that they didn't technically even do, right? Like right now, is Kamala going to raise taxes, or are they just going to expire, or is it just going to be the Trump tax cuts expiring, right? Do you see how bullshit that is?
No, 100%, especially based on how you spin it. The cigar report on Afghanistan, yeah. So it was fair in the sense that, it said in hindsight, you could make the case that, again, like President Biden closing down Bagram Air Base may, in hindsight, have been a mistake. But they talk about like how that was it was a sound decision, even if in hindsight it was a wrong decision, because we didn't have the troops there to maintain that base. And it was, like 30 minutes or 60 minutes away from a major population center. Mm-hmm. So they would have had to move all the people they were trying to evacuate miles and miles and miles away to a base that they didn't have the troops to defend adequately in the first place. So like even like that's a sound military decision. I mean, I'm not a military expert, but it's like, okay, if the choice is between fortification versus logistical convenience, and we'd have to surge troops in the first place, so you'd effectively be reinvading Afghanistan or at least violating the terms of the deal. Like the cigar report goes into detail, and it's like, hey, listen, you can make the case that Biden didn't handle this perfectly. You can also make the case that the State Department under Biden waited too long to declare, I think it's called a NEO, and I can't remember exactly what the acronym is, but it's like an emergency order. But again, even that, all of those decisions were based on sound logic. The State Department waited until the last possible minute to declare an emergency because they didn't want to undermine the Afghan government's legitimacy and basically say, hey, we're getting the out of here. They were trying to hold out as long as possible. the single biggest reason, according to that report, that Afghanistan collapsed is precisely what you said, was the Doha Agreement. And I sent you a PDF file. It dropped a couple of days before, a day or two before that debate. So it was like Sunday or Monday. The House Republican Foreign Affairs Committee did a whole hearing, or they concluded, like a year's worth of investigations on the Afghanistan withdrawal. And they timed it to drop a day before the debate. And this is the Democrats' like rebuttal to their report. And
just as a quick thing, it's embarrassing to say this. I truly hope that it changes. I have considered more over the past like 2 months leaving this country more than I ever have in my entire life, which is very sad.
I appreciate that, Destiny.
All right, bye.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.